week we're getting spooky. Bleh. Oh gosh. it's was that good? Was that a good intro? I wasn't prepared for it. Okay. Halloween themes in our first special multi-part episode on this week's Fandom Roulette. Bleh! How you doing, Joe? Hi, Cody. Did you like that goof? That was pretty good. I was not prepared for it.
I don't know if we're gonna edit it out, but right as right at the end of him telling you what the intro was, I just pull out my best Count Chocula.
I'm partial to Frankenberry myself, but oh man, look at the calendar. What day is it? It's only the spookiest day of the year, October 29th, 2 days before Halloween.
Blah.
Blah. Yeah, Halloween's one of those weird. This is one of those weird Halloweens where it's a Tuesday, so like everyone had to get all their Halloweeniness out on like Saturday and Sunday.
That's what I did.
Yeah, well, I didn't. I took Saturday off, and it was wonderful.
That sounds fantastic.
But yeah, so what nerdy stuff have you been up to as of late?
I just picked up Super Mario Odyssey, and I've been playing a little bit of that.
With the hat?
With the hats. I can throw hats at people and make them mine.
And isn't the hat like sentient?
Yes, the hat is sentient.
It's like the long-term story of Super Mario Odyssey. Isn't it about like the hat trying to secretly vor Mario?
No. No.
I was misinformed.
The premise of a Mario game, like most Mario games, is Bowser has kidnapped the princess, but he's taken it a step too far.
Oh no.
He has decided to steal a wedding and get married to Peach once and for all.
Oh, was that why he had his awesome pimp suit, Bowser?
If you've seen the amiibos.
The trailer?
Or the trailer.
Yeah, I saw the trailer, and it was like, what's up with Pimp Bowser?
Yeah, he's getting married, man.
He's getting married?
And only I can stop him.
Oh, well, that's kind of rude.
Yeah, and I have to beat up his wedding party.
Does Yoshi show up in this game at all? Do you know?
I'm only the first two worlds in.
Because you know what Yoshi likes to do? Likes to eat Koopa Troopa's whole and then spit out their shells.
That sounds terrible.
So anyway, yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, what have you been up to?
I've been up to some stuff. I'm rereading The Lord of the Rings for like the first time since I was a kid.
Nice. How's that going?
It's good, because like I was reading another book that like expired, but I have a Kindle, so I was like, I wonder if The Lord of the Rings is available, and it was. So I was like, I read through it. Started Two Towers again today, and like I'm much more familiar with the films than I am with the books, if I'm being completely honest.
Me too.
And so there are things that like happen in a certain movie that happen in the books later. I'm like, oh, I forgot that wasn't quite here. The books are like wonderful and beautifully written and all that good stuff. And I feel like there's aspects of the film that kind of improve the pacing a little bit.
Okay.
But like it's just magical to read. He's a really good author. I know he can be a little flowery for some people, but it's good for me. And like I realized now I'm of an age where I like appreciated the same things that he appreciated.
Okay.
So like I'm a little bit more interested in history than I was when I first read it. And when you read it for the first time, you're a little kid, and all you want is battles and swords and arrows, and you get confused why every chapter has to have like a lengthy poem about like this person or this place that they're going, or things like that. And as an adult, I've really learned to appreciate those things a little bit more. So it's fun to reread it.
Very nice.
Yeah. So it's a spooky day.
Yeah,
spooky
for sure.
things. So what do you want to start talking about? Before we begin, a little sidebar. So we're trying out something different this week because there's so many different Halloween-y things that we can talk about in all of our little sections. So we're going to do one where we're going to try out talking a little bit about everything in each one of our little sections of a different Halloween-y theme, because we didn't feel it was fair to devote a full episode to just one of the multiple aspects, because everyone likes a good spooky thing.
Yeah.
And so we decided to try it out. So let us know what you think and all that good information.
Yeah, let us know how this fan the hammer situation works out.
Oh, God. That's what you looked up. Huh? Okay. Yeah, fan the hammer. That's an Overwatch joke.
It's also, it could be other jokes too, but yes, primarily Overwatch.
Oh, okay.
So did you want to start with some spooky witches?
Yeah, we'll talk about some spooky history.
Or probably just more violent history.
Yeah, it's a little bit more violent. Although some of the things that they made witches do, or potential witches do, to show that they were not witches, was pretty spooky. And more so, like, messed up. So, so yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Salem witch trials, which sort of was the first instance of mass hysteria in colonial America.
Cool.
So, the Salem witch trials took place between February of 1692 and May of 1693, so a little bit over a year, in Massachusetts. And so we say the Salem witch trials, and now contemporary Salem, Massachusetts is really taking advantage of it. They have a witch museum up there and things like that. But it was really like the general Salem area, so like, you know, a couple of smaller cities around it as well. It's just kind of called Salem, the Salem witch trials, because pretty sure it took place in Salem County, and like Salem was kind of like the central point. So during this little period, 20 people were executed, 14 of them were women, and almost all were hung, with the exception of 5 people did die while they were in prison, and 2 of them were actually babies.
Ooh.
Which is kind of dark.
That is dark.
Spooky.
Is this going to be the theme for the episode?
Yeah. So, I think one of the really interesting things about the Salem witch trials is it kind of comes a little bit after Europe's obsession with witchcraft, because witches have always kind of been a through-line thing. Everyone's always kind of been afraid of witches, historically speaking, but by, you know, the 1690s, Europe had, like, kind of calmed down on everything.
They chilled out on witches?
They chilled out on witches, or at the very least, they chilled out on, like, persecuting, like, women that they suspected of being witches. Because it was almost always women, for whatever reason. There's a couple of reasons. And a fun little sidebar, I read a really interesting and compelling thing to suggest that the reason that witches fly on broomsticks was because a lot of the women that were accused were kind of, like, accused of, like, rejecting domesticity and, like, their traditional societal roles, so cleaning and things like that. So, like, what better way to showcase that than flying on, like, a symbol of domesticity, or the broom. Okay. So I don't remember which historian I read that in, but it was pretty cool. It was pretty interesting. But yeah, so at that point it kind of calmed down, but you know, it makes a certain amount of sense that there was a little kind of, I don't know, uptick in America for a couple of reasons. One, it was taking place in Massachusetts, which, as most people probably know, is an incredibly religious colony for quite a while. It was the Puritans who took, like, a very hardline stance on religion and societal values and things like that, and so it's not too surprising that they might, you know, kind of go a little witch crazy and go off the rails on things like that. And, you know, politically it was, like, easy points, I suppose, if that makes sense. And, you know, people, the mob can be a very scary thing, and that's kind of the case here. But yeah, so it began, like I said, in February 1692. There were these 2 little girls, and the one was the daughter of the town's minister, then the other one was like a cousin or maybe her friend, and these 2 little girls start acting, like, strange. So they start having, like, epileptic fits. So they start, you know, shaking. They start, you know, throwing stuff around and, like, yelling as they're doing it. There was...
That just sounds like a kid.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, like throwing shit around.
There were suggestions that they started speaking in tongues. So, you know, speaking gossip and all these various things.
But in Pig Latin.
In Pig Latin. And then there was a 4th thing here that I can't read my own handwriting about.
Wow.
So... yeah.
I'm gonna break off that point for a second.
Yes.
So, witch, wizard.
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference? Is there a difference? Is witch just the female term for wizards? Because I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in a way it has kind of become conflated to that. I think that in both cases they both kind of stem from historical depictions of druids.
Druid?
So, like, they wore the robes. They tended to, in a lot of cases, in both portrayals, they tended to be considered, like, outcasts from society.
Sure.
But in most iterations, wizards are, I guess, a little bit more favorably depicted, if that makes sense. Like, you have Merlin, obviously, who is, like, a court advisor. He's arguably the most famous wizard. And then a lot of witches in, stories and things like that. You had Medea, who was, or Medea probably actually, who was Jason's wife. And then, so Jason the Argonauts, she was Jason's wife. They get back to Argos. No, they get back to whatever city Jason's from. And then Jason basically, like, divorces her and marries the princess that he was promised at the beginning of his quest.
Oh.
And she goes crazy. She, like, kills 2 children of Jason's. Then she turns into a dragon and she flies away. You have the Weird Sisters in Macbeth. The double, toil and trouble. And, they're seen as old crones and hags and things like that. And they prophesize and they... they're almost always shown, like, depicted, like, killing small animals because they need, different aspects of small animals to kind of fuel their magic and things like that. And, of course, I don't know, like, if and where, like, Wicca falls into all of this because there is sort of this religious kind of respective nature that I'm assuming boils down from druids and druidic things, but I didn't do a lot of aspects into that aspect of witches as much. It's just I know that in most all depictions, witches tend to be older women, outcasts from society, and evil. I mean, there's not a lot of, early stories where the witches are anything other than, like, they appear on surface to be, like, kindly and grandmotherly, and then, they try to eat you, and so stay out of the woods kind of stories, things like that, because a witch might eat you, try to eat you, things like that. And so, there's all that other good stuff, too, where, like most things during this time period, if you were accused of being a subversive thing like this, you were not Christian. Oftentimes when witches were accused of consorting with the devil, things like that. And so, witches were pretty universally, like, people were scared of them.
Sure.
And, like I said, there were witch trials throughout Europe for a long time, utilizing various tests that we're going to be talking about in a little bit, to sort of prove their witchiness. And as you are going to find out, it was kind of a losing battle for these women. It was one of those deals where it's like, basically, if you were accused, then there was a really good chance that the mob was going to be appeased and you were going to be found out.
Rough.
And so, I think, like, the most popular version of witchcraft in contemporary society is you have that play The Crucible by Arthur Miller, the American playwright, which was written during the height of McCarthyism, and it's about a witch trial in a town, and it kind of is his metaphor for McCarthyism because a lot of similar techniques of if you were accused of being a communist, like, basically something was eventually going to happen when you were going to be found out to be a communist. If you were accused of being a witch during this time period, chances are you were going to be a witch, accused of being a witch. So these 2 little girls, they're doing all these weird, scary, spooky things, and they started, people were trying to question them, and so, there's evidence to suggest, like, they're just being kids, misbehaving. There was suggestions that they might have had some kind of mental instability or something like that, and no one was quite sure what that was, so something that was deemed weird or scary was devil and evil magic and things like that.
Sure.
But eventually 3 women are accused. Oh, and so the little girls also complain, they tell stories that they were being poked by pins and scratches, and when they do, they bring in doctors to do investigations, their skin is completely unblemished and things like that. So what's going on here? Are our children being poisoned? Are there witches? things like that. So there are 3 women that were accused of being witches. The first was Sarah Good, who was a homeless beggar.
Oh.
Sarah Osborne, who was a woman who always kind of like was on the outskirts of society. She rarely attended church, things like that. And in Massachusetts during this time, that was a big deal. And then the last one, and I think the one that most people know, is Tituba, who was an Indian slave who was owned by the family of one of the girls.
Oh, jeez.
And so, I mean, here, what's the common link of those 3 women that I just said? You have a beggar, a woman who kind of is like on the edges of society and doesn't go to church, and a slave.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
They're all outsiders.
Yeah, they're on the fringe.
It's not people that you're necessarily going to miss.
And by fringe, I mean people who weren't like dominantly either Christian or within
white,
like white society.
There was
making money
for sure. And so like things like Sarah Good was described as being like grotesque and rags and boils and all of those things we associate with witches. Tituba became popular with a lot of young women in the community because she was a very good storyteller, and she would tell stories that might be considered a little racy, I suppose, if you will.
A little racy for them.
Yeah, for sure. And so in this case, all 3 of these women, they were all tried and convicted. But as often these things go, things weren't getting better. In fact, things started to get worse. More children start, acting like this and things like that. Who knows, maybe they're copycats. It could just be like, children were doing this because they wanted to get rid of people. There's evidence to suggest that at least in the initial one, there was a family feud happening, and so maybe this was an attempt to get rid of a person who had wronged another family member, things like that. And so, once again, it's one of those deals where it's just kind of the mob mentality. People are starting to get scared. There's suggestion and evidence that witches might be involved. And so, oh no, witches have invaded our shores. Satan's here. We have to get rid of Satan. You're living on, a new place. You're living in a new place that you kind of a fringe society. You don't really have a lot of things to fall back on. No real safety nets and things like that. So people, started worrying. And what do you do to create stability? You start creating others. You start removing those others. And then eventually, hopefully, the mob calms down. Messed up, but it's effective.
Sure. So how do you find out if one of these people is a witch?
Well,
that was the sound of a note card.
That was the sound of a note card. This is a list of 10 popular tests that I have found. So number 10 is witch cake.
Witch cake?
Yeah, that cake.
I don't know what kind of cake that is. Why don't you elaborate
It's
for me?
It's witch cake. Witch cake, it's that cake.
Oh, God.
So anyway,
that was a wordplay.
Witch cake was a combination of like rye flour and the urine of the accused.
Ew.
This cake was then fed to a dog.
What?
And if the woman started screaming, then she was a witch.
Wait, if the dog ate pea cake of the pea of the witch, and she started screaming, he or she, I don't want to discriminate.
Yes.
Then she was a witch.
Yep.
He or she.
Yep.
Huh. Okay. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
I don't quite know the efficacy or how well that one worked. But it's one of the things that they did. So number 9 is spectral communications. So like I said, a lot of witches were accused of consorting with the devil. So if they were talking about seeing visions in their sleep, ghostly images, things like that, then there was a really good chance it was the devil communicating with you. You're a witch. You're dead.
Oof.
8, eyewitnesses. So
the best kind.
Yep. She's a witch. Did anyone else here do it? Yeah, I did also see her do that. And once again, this is kind of like that whole mob mentality idea where, well, of course it makes sense. That famous scene from My Python?
Yeah.
Where she turned me into a newt. Well, I got better. Things like that. That whole community is moving against her. 7, it's the witch's tet, another term for boil. So if there was a woman who was found with like unnatural or odd boils somewhere on her, or like moles or things like that, one of the things you could do is you could poke the boil.
Ew.
If there was no blood or she did not appear to be in any pain, then she was a witch.
Wait, that sounds That sounds like an easy way to just be like, haha, you're a witch.
Yeah, that's like all of these. If you think about it, it's like...
Is that the theme? Is it the theme? Did I learn the theme too early?
Yeah, you did. No, that's fine. That's
I'm sure everyone else figured it out on 9.
So 6 is artifacts.
Okay.
Like witchly artifacts. So
a broom.
Brooms. Do you have a black cat? Because black cat was a color of the devil. Things like that, and cats were always kind of considered to be like a more demonic of the creatures for whatever reason.
But they can be so cute.
And these guys called poppers, which is a kind of archaic term for voodoo dolls.
Oh, okay.
So if you find little dolls around that maybe look like a person in the community, maybe they are kind of unnatural in some way. These sort of artifacts were seen as like witchly artifacts, and that could be enough to get you killed.
Wow.
The Lord's Prayer test, which is like a literal test of faith. So you start praying and, things like that. And if you start acting strange or funny during the prayers. And then these 3 are some of the more famous ones.
Sure.
So the number 3 is forced confession by dunking, which is you tie a woman to a plank. You dunk her underwater, and you do it enough until she confesses that she's a witch. So,
oof.
Yeah.
That one's rough.
That's just torture.
Well, yeah, but...
Number 2 is pressing, which is you would lay a woman down. You would lay the accused down. Sure. You would put a board on the accused, and then you would start putting big stones on until they confess that they were a witch, or they would get squished.
Oh, so damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah. And then the number 1, and this is like a literal case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's the sink test.
Oh, no.
Which is you would take the accused out to a large body of water, you would put them into the water, and you would give them some kind of weight, and if they floated, they were a witch, and you would pull them out, and you would execute them, and if they sank, they were not a witch and are bad. And so actually, I lived in Scotland for a little bit, and there's this beautiful section called Newtown.
Okay.
And under Newtown, or historically speaking, Newtown was a very large lake that they drained to build this new section of town. And it was where they did a lot of their witches' trials. And so, historically speaking, according to at least this one tour guide, the accused would be given an opportunity to meet with their families before the drowning trial. And a lot of times what they would do is they would like shove rocks into the pockets, like add weight to the dresses and things like that, because it was much better for your child to die innocent than to float and be accused of witch and be executed. So they were intentionally weighing down their children so that they would sink to the bottom and be found innocent of witchcraft.
Jeez.
And a bit of fun. There's a beautiful garden right at the bottom of Newtown that they found the soil was incredibly fertile because there were lots of witches that were drowned there.
Oh no. That sounds terrible.
Yeah. Now that could be, Edinburgh ghost story embellishment.
Sure.
For fun and stupid Americans who wanted to have a little bit of fun and take one of those, myself included. But yeah, so that's a little bit about historic witches and witchcraft and things like that. So yeah, that's the history section of this multi-part episode.
Is that what we're doing? Is going to be our transition phase?
Yeah. I like to have music.
Yeah.
I invented it.
It'll be forever there, no matter what.
Let's see if I can remember it for the next transition.
I have a feeling you won't.
What are we going to move into?
Well, we're going to move into probably more not so horrific things.
Yeah.
But before we get there,
sure,
let's talk about social media.
No. That was very similar. I'm going to give myself an A-, I think, for that.
Yeah. So, if you want to talk to us specifically, whether it's about witches or I'm going to be talking about some fun Halloween stuff that we'll be, I know I will be doing. I'm sure we'll do video games, some RPGs, some shows to watch.
Yeah.
You can follow us and add to that discussion at fandomr_podcast. That's our Twitter handle.
Yeah, it's a good Twitter handle.
If you want to send us an email, if you want to be a little more private about it,
if you want to tell us how wrong we are.
Exactly. If you want to just destroy us, you can contact us. God, I can talk. At fanroulettepodcast@gmail.com.
Cool.
We also have a website up, which has...
Look at us, fancy.
We're getting there.
Fancy boys.
You can find us at fandomroulette.com. That's where we're going to be posting a lot of the shows that are coming up.
Yeah.
Information about what's happening. I know soon we're going to have all this up on iTunes, and that'll be something that we post on the website.
Yeah, we're definitely about it.
Yeah, we're going to get into the YouTube realm as well, but all that will be found on our website. Right. And if you want to go straight to the source, at least for now, you can find us on SoundCloud at Fandom Roulette.
Very nice.
And then let's talk about some spooky stuff to do.
Ooh, spooky stuff. Transition?
Yeah, this is a transition.
Do.
Okay, so fun things to do. So I'm the resident video game nerd. Basically. So I was for Halloween fun spooky games to play and the experiences I've had with them.
Okay.
So the first two, if you are a nerd who wants to get spooked and you got a little money to throw out for like a AAA game, I recommend Until Dawn and Resident Evil 7. Both of those are really good.
Okay.
Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil, you've heard of it. Everyone's heard of it at this point.
Zombies.
Yeah, zombies.
Maximum Wesker.
Yeah. So this one is really different. It's done in the first person. It's kind of jumped up in the times instead of being the weird camera angles of the original games. It's first person. It's spooky, and it's in I want to say it's in Louisiana or somewhere down south.
Okay.
So the first majority of the game is set in this house with this really messed up family, and soon things get spooky and out of control.
With an evil residence?
Yeah, with an evil residence, some would say. It got so scary.
Okay.
That my fiance and I were playing. I was playing, she was watching.
Sure.
And we got to the first jump scare of the game.
Okay.
Which someone pops out of a room. Spoilers. And I shook. I was like, oh, that was scary.
Yeah.
My fiance screamed at me. Just straight up just was like, bah! And that scared me more than the actual jump scare.
See, I probably would have screamed a lot because I don't do jump scares. That's not my game.
I'm not super I can handle them. All in all, that game is super scary. I enjoy it. It gets a little. It ramps up in a little. It's less of a horror movie towards the end, and it kind of feels more like an action film. But it's good. It's definitely worth the purchase. I think it definitely revitalizes the Resident Evil.
So are there zombies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely zombies.
So it's because from everything I've seen about it, it felt like it was very much like you were just playing through Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, basically. But imagine that with zombies, and you have Resident Evil 7.
Fair enough.
And then the second game that's in kind of the triple. You'll probably find it pretty cheap now.
Okay.
Because I think it didn't sell as well as the developers were hoping for, so I think it's kind of a dead project now. But it's Until Dawn. It's basically, if you've played Heavy Rain or know how Heavy Rain plays, basically it's a kind of instead of being, and we could have a whole conversation on the logistics of a game.
Okay.
But it's very easy to play. There's not a whole lot of it's not like a platformer. You don't have to have really on-spot controls.
Uh-huh.
But in this game, there's a lot of action commands or quick time events, which I know gets a lot of bad
polarizing.
Yeah, and I think in this case, because the game solely revolves around this, it works.
Okay.
I like it, and basically it plays out a slasher film set in on a campground. Okay. And it slowly gets out of control, and I think there's something like 7 or 8 characters.
Is that the one where you play as a group of kids?
Yeah, you play as a group of teenagers.
Okay.
And you can save all of them, I think.
Okay, interesting.
However, some of them are really hard to keep alive. Some of them are just kind of naturally born down that path to die.
Okay.
So they're hard, like, and a lot of those, like, quick time events, like, if you don't juke left instead of right, because they give you a lot of choices and a lot of paths to go down, those characters will die, and that kind of ultimately changes up what happens at the end.
Okay.
I watched my fiance play it, but she also scared me, because the day she got it, I was playing, I don't even know, something on the PlayStation 4, and we were chatting, me, her, and then a couple of my buddies, and it was dead quiet in chat. I think we were all just really focused on what we were doing.
Okay.
And something happened on her end. I could hear it in the house or in the apartment, and then she just screams, and I think that scared me more than the actual game itself, because it was just pure terror.
Is that also the one where they give you periodic, like, psych profiles?
Yeah.
To figure out how to make it scariest for you?
Yep.
Ugh, oh gosh. No,
yeah.
Thank you.
No, it's it's good. It's definitely worth, especially now, because you can probably find it used really cheap.
Yeah. Wasn't it getting a sequel?
If it is, I'm excited for it, but
yeah.
I have no idea.
I thought I saw a sequel for it, like Until Dawn 2 or whatever.
Okay.
So,
yeah. And then I guess if we're looking at this from a spectrum of expense, because Resident Evil is a AAA game, I think it's $60.
Sure.
You might be able to find it used for cheap, but it was a pretty solid game.
Okay.
Until Dawn was kind of your medium one, and a cheap one. It's on sale right now on Steam. I think you can get the whole collection, which is the base game and the DLC, for $5-6.
Whoa.
And it's called Layers of Fear.
Whoa.
And it's a jump scare arama through the psyche of a artist who is, I think you're led to believe he's going insane.
Oh, thank you.
And so you kind of go through, you just kind of like walk through his house, and as you keep walking through it and collecting things and like kind of learning more about him, like the house starts to warp and twist into this kind of insane, and like it gets progressively worse.
Oh, no.
To the point where, and they do this thing, and I actually really like it in horror games, where you're moving forward, like you're going down a hallway, and then the hallway ends. Like, there's no door, there's no nothing. And you're like, what the fuck? And then you turn around, and the hallway that you were just in is a totally different environment. Like, it's a trick on the mind, how they do it. And it's, like that. I think, actually, it's, not only is it $5-6 on Steam, anyone who has Twitch Prime has it for free. You can claim it right now for this month, I believe.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's a free to super cheap game, and if you like jump scares and you like and you like kind of watching a person devoid into madness, this game is it's definitely worth a look if you're. And then at the very bottom of that spectrum, the weirdest game I've seen so far. I had to watch somebody play it. I couldn't play it myself because it was too much.
Okay.
And it's going to sound really silly when I say this, but I assure you this game is, like, bizarre and scary.
I wonder if I can guess what it is.
You can. I think I told you about this.
Okay.
It's called Doki Doki Literature Club.
You told Joel about it.
I did.
Yeah, I don't know.
This game starts off as a kind of Japanese animated dating sim where you kind of go into this literature club at school.
Nice.
There's a bunch of cute girls and you're supposed to, like, woo them. And for, like, the first hour, that's the game.
Then shit goes sideways.
And then things get crazy. I won't spoil any more than that. But if you're looking to get real messed up in the brain, real spooked, definitely check this game out. Okay. And it's free, I believe.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so you can just go on Steam, type that name up, and download it.
That's
and it does some pretty cool stuff. I kind of want to wait to come back to it to describe what I liked about it.
Yeah, maybe I'll actually play it.
Yeah, maybe you'll get spooked. I know you're shaking your head now, but maybe I'll make you play it.
Probably not.
And I'll probably record you getting spooked by it.
Oh, no. Yeah.
But yeah, those are some great games that are out right now. I know Resident Evil 7 came out earlier this year, so it's not quite new.
Oh.
I know The Evil Within 2 has been getting a lot of good reviews.
Maybe that was the game I was thinking of. The Evil Within 2.
Yeah,
Is that the one with, like, the scary milky white face?
Yeah.
Okay. Never mind. I take it back. Until Dawn 2 did not get a sequel. It was The Evil Within 2.
Yeah, The Evil Within 2 just came out, and if you don't know what it is, it's a Bethesda horror game. So the guys who made Skyrim decided to make a spooky game. What I know about The Evil Within 2, I haven't played it. I've kind of watched a little bit here and there to see if it's worth my time. Definitely have to play the first one to understand what the hell's going on in the second one.
Okay.
They don't do a great job at filling people in who want to jump in. Yeah. I know there was a lot of controversy with the first game because they took an artistic direction of forcing a film black bar on the top and bottom of the game, so the game felt really, tight in your face. It's supposed to be spooky, but I think a lot of people were just more annoyed by the artistic decision, and so for I think the first month or two of the game's release, you just had to deal with it. And for a lot of people who have FOV problems, this game was pretty brutal. It's definitely way too close to the environment to see properly. But second game, from what I've seen, they've kind of changed it in scope. It's actually a open world horror game.
Okay.
Which the first one was not. So that's it's been interesting watching that. But yeah, it's definitely, they set up an area that's really good for mind fuckery and doing all sorts of different stuff. They don't have to necessarily be you're in a log cabin with Jason. Speaking of that, speaking of good transition by myself, I have to add.
Good job.
Friday the 13th is a PC game that's on sale right now. It's half off, so I think it's $20. And it is it's an asymmetrical horror game. There's another one, Dead by Daylight, which is same premise but not with the Friday the 13th brand. That's a little cheaper if you're looking to save a little more money.
Asymmetrical.
Yeah, asymmetrical. So one person gets to play as Jason, and there's 5 or 6 other people who play as the camp counselors. And so Jason's goal is pretty self-explanatory: murder all the kids, and then the kids either have to escape or kill Jason.
I would go with the first option.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of objectives. You can get yourself a car, but oh no, the car doesn't have a battery, and you can't find the keys, and there's no gas in it. Because, that's how I leave my cars at camp.
So is this a PC game, or?
I believe it's multi-platform. It's on sale right now on Steam, which is why I bring that up. But I think
the reason I ask is it I don't even know how to phrase it. If you were playing on PS4, I guess, or whatever, is it one of those deals where the Jason person has to be isolated, or do everyone have to be really good at not screen watching?
Oh, so yeah, that's the thing. Is it's not a split screen multiplayer game. You have to play it online. Yeah, okay. So there's no split screen, which is unfortunate because I think that could be fun.
Well, I think the Switch could.
Yeah, I think the Switch or the Wii U could do a really good job at giving the screen to the killer, and then giving the camp counselors the TV screen. But unfortunately, that's a dead console in the water.
The briefest of tangents.
Yeah.
My little cousins, have a Wii U, and there's this game called Nintendo Land.
Yeah.
That did something like that, where it was a lot of the games there was one person who had the screen, everyone else was on the TV, and it's a shame that they didn't take advantage of that platform feature a little bit more, because that could have transitioned it into one of the most revolutionary systems out there. But
I mean, I've been as soon as I saw Nintendo Land, I was so jacked for just what the Wii U was going to have coming, and I'm too nervous to make a asymmetrical multiplayer game that could have utilized the technology. But
hopefully they're a little bit braver with the Switch.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But anyway, Friday the 13th, Dead by Daylight, great. If you're looking for some spooks that require other people to play, whether you're, online or you grab a bunch of your friends to LAN or whatever.
Yeah.
Definitely some good options. Definitely I've been spooked in these situations.
Sounds pretty spooky.
And you know what? I think we can transition to let's do some RPG stuff.
Sounds good.
Let's talk about role-playing games.
So what role-playing games are we going to talk about?
Well, I was going to talk about 2 just solid choice. If you want to do a one-shot spooky horror game.
Sure, yeah.
There's 2 that I would recommend.
Okay.
Definitely the Call of Cthulhu games. It's kind of an obvious choice. The DM's got a lot of work ahead of them. Because I don't know the rules very specifically for Call of Cthulhu. I think
what system is it? Is it?
It's its own system.
Okay.
It might be modularly based off of something else, but as far as I know, it's its own system. And very from what I've seen and like read about the system, the people who live the longest are the ones that can run the fastest.
Oh.
So a lot of it is dealing, it's like a H.P. Lovecraft novel typically, depending on your DM. You go and find something that you can't explain and it's vastly superior in all forms than you could possibly deal with, and you got to find a way to stop it, sort of a thing. But the RPG kind of leaves itself mechanically to basically being like, hey, your character's eventually going to go insane and die, and that's just how the game works. It's like, don't be
super attached.
Well, you can be. I think there's a difference between being attached and just being okay with yourself knowing that, like, if a character dies, like, it was for a good story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's definitely one of those games where your characters are probably going to die or be driven insane and start eating, like babies in the corner of a room.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then Dread is another good one. This one is RPG light.
Okay.
You actually don't roll dice.
Okay.
There's no dice rolling in this game. All it is a Jenga tower.
I've heard of this.
And so basically, you play it as like a B horror movie or whatever. Like the game master or the dungeon master creates a scenario. It could be anything from zombies to Jason and whatever.
Sure.
And so every time one of the players wants to do something, and you think it's a hard, like, if as the game master you think it's a difficult challenge, you tell them to pull from the tower.
Yeah.
And so at the beginning, like most horror movies, that's fine. You pull brick from the tower.
Sure.
Maybe you pull two. Tower's still pretty stable.
Yep.
But your character dies if the tower falls while you're pulling from it.
Oh.
So it gets pretty intense.
That does sound pretty intense.
There's also another cool mechanic where you can, like in most horror movies, you can sacrifice yourself by just
pushing the tower.
Yeah, like when you're like, hey, I want to do this thing, and it's like, okay, pull from it. And it's like, I'm going to do this, but sacrifice myself to keep the rest of the people going. And you push the tower over, you set the tower back up, and you keep playing. That one, I besides the Jenga tower, and I don't really know how much that runs for anymore, like $15-$20, I'd imagine.
No idea.
But the PDF online, I think you can get a digital copy for pretty super cheap. I think $15-$20 again. But it's a good light. There's not a whole lot of rules, but there's just enough to like get it going and get spooky. I know Jess wants to run one at some point in the future, and so I'll definitely be inviting you and some friends over to experience it.
Sounds rad. There's one that I would like to throw out real quick.
Oh, for sure.
That I played a variety of it because there's two games that are flavored similarly but are a little bit different. Monster of the Week.
Okay.
And then the one that I have experienced, which is a game called Monster Heart.
Nice.
So Monster Heart is a Powered by the Apocalypse system.
Okay. Yeah.
So you only need D6s for it, and you are playing basically a teenage monster.
Nice.
So you can be a werewolf, a witch, a ghoul, a ghost, a queen vampire, a regular vampire, a couple other things. And it tends to play very similar to a teen romance show a little bit, because basically you're trying to use your powers to get other characters to sleep with you.
Team Wolf concept a little
Yeah.
bit?
For sure. And I've like I said, I only played one session, and I feel like I had a very forgiving DM. Which, God, if I ever wrote an autobiography of my RPG experiences, it was a very forgiving DM, the Joe Scott story. I've never played with a really wonky one, but basically I wanted to be a Frankenstein's monster who was also a jock, which I don't think even the creators were intending any person who ever played their game to want to be that, because it's...
I don't know why. I mean, the Frankenstein's monster was jacked.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be a little bit more like you're like a nerdy outsider kid who is also secretly like a witch.
Got it.
Things like that, right? You're like
so you're like a fringe. You're
like
much
Buffy
like
the Vampire Slayer-ish,
right?
Where it's like they're not the popular kids by any stretch of the imagination, but they're also like paranormal fighters or whatever. And then Monster of the Week is kind of flavored similarly, except that it's designed to be a little bit more like an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where it's your little team goes to fight monsters or like Supernatural, where there's like a kind of like a creature that you just have to take down. Both are mechanically very simple. It's just a couple of D6s to do basically anything, and from the sounds of it, on the DM side, or the GM side, there's not a super high amount of rules, so if it's like you're looking to be a first-time DM, that might be a good direction to go.
Nice.
And then, as far as I'm aware, the only things that you really need, it's like a one book that has the character sheets in it, basically, because all you have to do is make photocopies, and a lot of them like have the initial information, a lot of the initial information filled out. Obviously, you do get to make some choices, but it's not quite like Dungeons and Dragons where you have to roll and look at table charts, and you need 5 books before you can begin. Well, you don't need 5 books, but it's beneficial to have a couple of books before you begin. So yeah, those are some fun, spooky RPGs that you can play with your friends to get you in that Halloween spirit.
Yeah. Ooh. Depending on this next week, we might actually run a Halloween short one-off.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah.
In South Shore?
Maybe. Well, I haven't decided yet. There's some bits and pieces. I have a one-shot dungeon ready. I just need to fit it in. So yeah. And I think we could keep going. Like, I think at one point there will be a role-playing game session about
just horror
games, or like how to create that kind of atmosphere, because I know that can be kind of tough.
I mean, last year we had a kind of Halloween one-shot in our Dungeons and Dragons campaign, because really horror is you can do horror in any system with tone. It's more about tone than anything else if you think about it.
Right. It's the tone of your voice. It's the mood lighting, and maybe you're not in a brightly lit room. Maybe it's dim, and
maybe you're in a spooky courtyard with a werebear.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. That was a Halloween themed.
Mm-hmm.
I totally forgot about that.
We played it like 2 weeks after Halloween, because that was when we were on a bi-weekly schedule.
Right.
And we were only able to get so much done in the first session. But
right. So yeah.
Us getting distracted in D&D.
No, that would never happen.
Yeah. Transition.
Yes, we can transition if you want.
Anyway, and for the grab bag.
Oh yeah, I mean, just kind of spooky stuff in general to enjoy. If you're not looking for anything, if you don't want to do a role playing game, you don't want to spend $60 for a video game to just kind of bro out on your own.
Sure.
There's a bunch of good board games out there, and the one that'll probably be the majority of this conversation, just because it's such a good Halloween game.
Oh, it's so much fun.
Is Betrayal at House on the Hill. I know that seems like a silly title for a game, but
it kind of, is, if you think about it.
Right, and so basically the way the game plays out, you get, I think it's 2 to
6 players,
2 to 6 players, and you play different little characters.
And this is one of those games where it's there are a lot of them out there now, but I feel it's a genre that's still increasing in popularity, which is kind of like an RPG in a box.
Yeah.
Because each character has stats that have different abilities and things like that, and the game sort of acts as 2 phases.
Yeah. The
first phase is exploration, so...
Yeah, and so everyone plays together. You're working as a team to explore this spooky house. Blah. And what happens is, as you progress through the game, you get what's called omen cards. Ooh. And basically what happens is you get an item, but you have to make a haunt roll every time a new person collects a new omen card.
Yeah.
And as that happens, the higher, basically the roll is you take a bunch of these weird D6s, which are your standard dice, but the faces are different. Usually there's either blank sides, there's the 1, and then 2 dots. So you don't roll very high in this game. But you pick up 6 die, and you roll based on how many omens there are, without getting too technical. After someone finally fails that roll, you get into the second phase. So a lot of the beginning is just like, hey Joe, we should, go check out the basement and see if there's some cool items, and I'll go check up on the attic and see if there's any cool stuff. And as you progress, there's a lot of cards that'll be like, oh, there's a ghost in the room. You need to roll dice to, figure out if you get spooked or you pick up something cool.
Sounds pretty spooky.
And so after you fail that haunt roll finally, hopefully at that point you've explored the house pretty well. And the nice thing about the house, when we describe the house, so there's these tiles. So you start off in the main hallway of this house, and you flip random tiles. And so, like, game gets kind of a little crazy. Like, you take a left from the main hall, and you're in the kitchen, which then goes into the master bedroom. So there's a lot, like, the house gets really kind of quirky and topsy-turvy, which can be a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun.
It keeps it fresh, so you don't know, like, okay, if I go down the east wing of this house, I'll find this room. Like, it's always random.
Yep.
And so the haunt is revealed. Someone rolls too low. There's a table that, like, whatever the card was that you drawed when you failed.
And the room you were in when you failed.
Yeah, and there are, I want to say there's a lot of different haunts.
Yeah, I think the initial game before the expansion has, like, 60-some.
Yeah, so there's 60-some. So the second half of the game, the haunt has been revealed. The house is not what it seems to be. Mm-hmm. And based on, where you got the haunt and what item you picked up, basically gives you a new game.
Yep. So
you still play within the same rules, but they can be completely different. Like, I know
one of your friends betrays you.
Yeah.
And starts to actively fight against you. And at that point it becomes anywhere from 2 to 5 versus 1.
Right.
And the haunts have included your pretty standard, like, zombie slasher movie where it's zombies have shown up and you have to just get your way out of there. The one that we most recently played, there were like 4 or 5 voodoo dolls around the house, and the betrayer basically is, kind of taunting you with, like, ominous sayings to see if you can find the voodoo dolls, and once you destroyed all the voodoo dolls, then the betrayer loses and is destroyed. There's one where they're like a giant cat demon, like, shows up to fight something else.
Okay, I haven't done that one yet.
That was from the expansion.
Okay.
There was one that was the worst one in the entire world. Just this horrible blob monster shows up, and every turn you needed like 4 items to defeat it.
Okay.
And every turn it got to expand into one room, or it expanded in all 4 directions.
Oh no!
And either we read the rules very wrong on that one, or it was like literally one of the most brutal things in the entire world. I ended up actually committing suicide in that game. I just ran to the blob because I was like, there's no way we're going to beat this. I became one with the blob. I went out on my own terms. But yeah, it's a really fun game, and it's a game that, while it sounds rather intricate, I don't know if we've ever played a game that's lasted more than like 2 hours.
No. And the rules are pretty easy to... Yeah. Once you... I know there's always that weird first game where you're trying to figure out the rules, so that might take a bit. But there are lots of instructions online. Yeah. The rules are pretty straightforward.
The cards are very straightforward in what you have to do.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of ambiguity there.
Mm-hmm. I feel like the part where it gets like a little bit hairy is when you get to the betrayer, especially if it's a person's first time being the betrayer, because at that point you do have to read a pretty lengthy list. And I know that last time we played, my sister, it was her first time being the betrayer, and she did a fine job, but there were a couple of times where she was concerned she wasn't playing it right, and it turns out she was playing it perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But, it's at that point there's a lot that begins happening, because in a lot of cases it's you either have to have a certain amount of items, you need to have a certain amount of something in your hand, or
right, or you have to like go to specific places and complete certain dice rolls.
That's the other thing too, right? Is so the game really isn't designed, but random chance makes fools of us all. The game really isn't designed to go into the haunt until you've found at least 4 or 5 omens, but sometimes just based on bad luck, sometimes the haunt will happen and you've only like explored like a quarter of the tiles.
I know we had it happen once where, no joke, I think we had discovered 6 rooms.
Oh,
so it's 6 turns, and there was 4 of us. Mm-hmm. So we literally got through 1 turn, and halfway through the second turn of all of us playing, and the haunt was revealed, and it was brutal. Because the person ended up, like, the betrayer ended up becoming this super person who could basically kill you in one hit, and you had to find these intricate things, but we hadn't explored the house yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it got pretty rough, and I think they ended up winning that time for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
It's super fun. Definitely worth picking up for Halloween.
A lot of fun, yeah, and it's kind of moved up through the ranks. And then there's an expansion, but you don't have to worry about that for a while because there's a reason why they only had one expansion within the first, however long, because there's literally so many variables that it's really hard to play the same game twice.
Yeah, I think personally, and I've played it a lot, when we first picked it up, we played it once or twice every weekend for a really long time. And then, as people would come over, let's play Betrayal. So I've played it a lot, and I still haven't played all of the original games. So
that's a testament to just how much variety there is.
It is a lengthy game. Anytime someone brings it up, I'm like, yes, I want to see what happens this time. Mm-hmm. It's a great game. I know one of the haunts, which was kind of fun. So it's not always one betrayer. One time we had basically the Thing situation where a couple people were infected.
Oh, interesting.
And so you had to kind of and everyone kind of had to keep quiet about who they were. You didn't want to outright say that, oh, I'm not infected, because that means that somebody could, the person who was infected could find you. Yeah. And it was very sneaky. A lot of the rules were anytime you infect someone, you just kind of, You roll a die, and if you get this, you slip them a card that says they're infected, mm-hmm. and you had to do it regardless. You had to send them a card regardless. It was really sneaky. It was fun.
Sure.
Granted, we were all really wasted, so I don't know how accurate we were playing it, but
sure,
it was still fun.
All right.
Definitely. And then another one, if you're if you're hooked on this and you want a little more, get a little more involved, and you like that H.P. Lovecraft vibe. Oh, no. Mansions of Madness.
Okay.
That plays very similarly to Betrayal. You get a bunch of tiles, mm-hmm. and I think it works a little differently. So, the haunt is where the game really changes. Okay. In Mansions of Madness, that change starts at the very beginning.
Oh,
you pick I guess the way it works is you pick a theme or the story that you want to play, and then you pull out the pieces for that story, and then there's this nice little companion app for tablets and your phones where the phone or your tablet acts as the game master, and basically whenever you do something, you plug it into the app, which is really easy, and the game is kind of told through the app instead of through the book.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's definitely that one's a little more pricey though, for obvious reasons. But yeah, that's kind of if you want to do fun, spooky stuff.
And then how about we both throw out one spooky TV show?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And this one's pretty obvious. If you don't know, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Stranger Things.
All right. So yeah, season 2 dropped on Friday. Neither of us have finished season 2, but we wouldn't talk about it anyway because we don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, definitely. We're gonna super avoid season 2 spoilers. Yeah. Granted, I'm only on episode 3,
and I'm a little bit further than that.
Yeah, so we're gonna try to avoid that stuff. But season
1, I mean, it's incredibly charming and it's incredibly fun. It's classic. I'm not a huge fan of scary movies and scary things, but I found it incredibly tame in terms of scares and things like that.
Yeah.
It's very much like Spielberg meets Stephen King.
Yep.
Where there's a kind of spooky mystery with some cross-dimensional stuff thrown in, and it's also at its core a group of 4 kids who are kind of nerds and on the outside of society, using their nerdiness to kind of combat this evil. So they're all very genre savvy, and they're all they view the whole world through the lens of Dungeons and Dragons, which is pretty fun.
Yeah,
things like that. But yeah, I mean, I fell in love with it pretty quick. It's a cool story, cool visuals. It's an 80s show, or I mean, it's 80s nostalgia without being annoying about it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I feel I was thinking about this as I was driving into work today. I feel the 80s and 90s are really the only time you can set horror things anymore. Because, and I have a justification for this, which is because in a post-cell phone world, it's a little bit harder to sell the scariness.
Yeah, because there's always just that pick up your phone. It's in your pocket.
Exactly.
There's no if you dial 911 on your cell phone, unless you are in an absolute dead spot, so like, what, Nevada?
Yeah.
Like, so on... did I just, like, call someone out?
No,
I don't know.
But
like a desert.
If you're in the
Besides
middle of
a
the
desert,
woods,
you can call 911
woods.
and it goes to a satellite. You can call someone, and you even have I know on most smart devices there's like a boost, like a little battery backup for in case you're in a situation where, oh no, my phone's dying, but Jason's behind me. So like it's really hard to sell the, like, you either have to go into like the super future where you can kind of make up bullshit,
sure,
like science nonsense like Jason X, or you have to kind of go back where phones and active cameras on every street corner aren't necessarily a thing.
So, yeah, I feel like it was really smart to set it in the 80s for that reason, because, you know, the first season's very much like a missing kid mystery, and if you had a cell phone, it was just like, oh, where was the last time we saw a cell phone? Trajectory. Yeah. So Stranger Things is really good, and then this is one that I'm going to throw out that I know we have slightly differing opinions on, but Penny Dreadful.
Oh, yeah.
You can stream that on Netflix. All 3 seasons are up on Netflix.
Both of those are on Netflix, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think we said
this is a Netflix original. Penny Dreadful was Showtime, and then is now streaming. So Penny Dreadful, like, super duper quick synopsis, because I know we're kind of running a little long at this point, but super duper quick synopsis. It is basically what I wanted the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen to be. It is set in Victorian era, and it is a team-up of Victor Frankenstein, a very, like, Alan Quatermain, like, explorer type. His kind of African manservant gets a little uncomfortable. Ethan Chandler, who's like a roguish cowboy from America. Eva Green, whose character, whose name is Vanessa. Woof. I just call her Eva Green. So, and so basically, it's based off of the old Penny Dreadful stories, which were these like dime novels that were usually full of like horror and adventure, and weren't necessarily the most intellectual things in the entire world, but they were sold very cheap. They were like dime store novels, and they were very popular. And so I love the show because it knows exactly what it is and exactly what it wants to be, which is just cheesy enough. It's like I feel like every single actor on that show knew exactly what they were doing, which is they knew that it was inherently kind of silly, and they knew that it was inherently cheesy,
over the top a little.
Over the top, but you know, and they give performances where it's like they know it, but at the same time they're treating it with enough sincerity and enough respect that it's not necessarily like goofy. It's not like, you know, like a character will turn to the camera and wink. It's like, we have to go fight this vampire now, wink. But at the same time, you know, it's not like they're so serious about everything that like
it's not super grim and dark 100% of the time.
And so, you know, my friend was shocked when I told him how much I loved it, because I'm not a huge horror fan. I really view it as an adventure story with horror elements thrown in there versus like a straight horror. So,
and I think I vary a little. I watched part way through the first season, I think, right when there's a big character reveal for somebody. I don't want to spoil too much, so that, you know, in case people do want to watch.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in it that I was like, I think at that point I was just like, I don't know if I want to watch this right now. Just because I was starting to understand like it's just cheesy enough.
Yeah.
And so I put it down, and I was kind of like, from then on, like, especially because like other things were on.
Sure.
You know, it's hard to compare.
Our lists grow every day.
Right. So it ended up just kind of entering the void, if you will, for me. So I don't necessarily think I disliked it. I think I just needed time away from it. And I'll probably, if I ever do find enough time, which I think once we get into the holiday season, I'll have more time to really get like down and dirty with some of the shows I've been meaning. Like, I want to finish Mr. Robot, and I would like to go back to Penny Dreadful and see how I feel about it. I also want to watch American Gods, which I think is kind of bordering this kind of theme a little bit.
Yeah. I still need to finish season 1 of American Gods too. Shit. Yeah, I don't know, man. Just cheesy enough is kind of my sweet spot.
Okay.
It's the things that I really am drawn to.
Right.
I don't know why, but I don't want my things to be so dark that it's like.
Yeah, like it can be a downer.
Which is kind of why I had to take a pause from Mr. Robot, but that's another story for another day. But yeah, Penny Dreadful, just spooky enough to be fun for Halloween, but not too spooky that it gives you nightmares, because I am very much a horror baby, and I was able to get through it perfectly fine without any major qualms. There's like a couple of jump scares every now and then, but they were nothing to, write home about, I suppose.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening to our Halloween episode. Hopefully you aren't too spooked, and hopefully you made it past the witch stuff, because honestly that stuff's kind of a bummer. But I mean, it's history. History can kind of be a bummer sometimes. Lo siento. We'd be curious to hear what you thought about this style. We might be considering maybe transitioning over to this for a little bit, just to see what it feels like, instead of doing big, long block episodes of one individual subject.
Yeah.
So we'd be curious to hear what you think. If you liked one way or the other better, let us know. Obviously, we'd love to hear your input.
Yeah, and we gave you all the modes of contact if you want to get in on this conversation.
Yeah.
So, I think that does it for an episode.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank you guys so much for listening once again. And for Phantom Podcast, my name's Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.